All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into something really ambitious, a blueprint for a whole new kind of military power.
And this isn't just some abstract idea. We're looking at a very specific, very detailed strategic vision. The whole concept is about how you could possibly take dozens of totally separate militaries and get them to operate as one single unified force.
Okay, so the framework we're about to walk through today, it all comes from a very, very specific source. It's important we're clear on this because our entire analysis, everything we're about to discuss, is drawn directly from the concepts laid out in one place. And that is episode 22 of the book The Nuclear Umbrella, written by Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir. I really want to let that sink in. This isn't a collection of different ideas. It's a deep dive into the vision presented in that specific chapter. It lays out a really comprehensive and honestly pretty provocative vision for what military unity could look like. So let's unpack its core arguments step by step.
So what's the massive problem this blueprint is trying to solve? It really boils down to this one huge question. How in the world do you take dozens of completely independent militaries, each with its own history, its own culture, its own command structure, and somehow merge them so they act and speak with a single voice? It sounds almost impossible, right?
Well, before we can even talk about the solution, we've got to understand the problem as the author sees it. And the key word here is fragmentation, a state of deep, deep fragmentation.
So according to the book, the current landscape is just disconnected. Think about it. You've got totally separate command structures, armies that don't even use the same communication protocols, no unified doctrine to guide them. And this gets really critical when you look at the tech side of things. We're talking no joint battlefield awareness, no shared satellites or early warning systems. It's like every single military is its own little island, completely isolated from the others.
And look, the author argues this isn't some abstract theoretical issue. No way. The book points to very real-world crises. Think places like Gaza, Yemen, or Kashmir, and says this exact fragmentation is what leads to delays, to mixed messages, and, in the end, to complete inaction when it matters most.
And the book really hammers this point home with a super powerful line. It says, without unified command, military power evaporates. Just think about that. All that potential strength, all that collective power, it just, poof, disappears. It becomes so much less than the sum of its parts.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's a big one. So what's the solution presented in the blueprint? Well, it's all about creating a single, integrated command.
Now, the absolute core of this whole idea is something called the Integrated Command and Control System, or ICCS for short. And the author uses this amazing metaphor to get the point across, calling it the heart, brain, and central nervous system of the whole alliance. I mean, that really paints a picture, doesn't it? It's not just a command center, it's meant to be the living, thinking core of the entire military machine.
So you might be asking, how would this actually work? Well, the flow of information is everything. It all starts with one unified strategy, just one. Then, from a single central command, orders are sent out instantly. And the goal is for everyone to get that same command at the exact same time, whether you're in Riyadh, Ankara, Cairo, or Jakarta. Total synchronization.
And why go to all this trouble? Well, the payoff is huge. This kind of system is specifically designed to get rid of all the friction you see in a divided structure. We're talking about preventing confusion, stopping different armies from doing the same job twice, and maybe most importantly, drastically reducing the risk of those awful friendly fire incidents.
All right, so we've got the problem and the proposed fix. Now let's talk about the big picture, the ultimate vision here, moving from division to unity. And to really get a handle on just how massive this proposal is, you have to think about the sheer number of players. This isn't about linking up, 3 or 4 allies. No. According to the book, we are talking about 57. 57 distinct, separate armies. And the vision is to take all of those, all 57, and turn them into this. 1. A single unified force under one command. I mean, look at the contrast here. On one side, you have the current state, fragmentation, which the author says leads to delays, confusion, and inaction. And on the other side, you have the goal, unity. And that's meant to deliver one strategy, one unified voice, and one coordinated response. It's a night and day difference.
Hey, remember that quote from earlier? Without unified command, military power evaporates? Well, here's the flip side of that coin, and it's just as powerful. The author says, with unified command, it multiplies. And that right there is the central claim of this entire blueprint. Unity isn't just addition, it's multiplication. It's a true force multiplier.
So, to wrap this all up, the book uses one more fantastic metaphor to summarize the end goal. The whole point is to create a single, synchronized spine for the entire alliance. You know, a central structure that connects every single part and allows the whole body to finally move as one.
So, this blueprint gives us the what and the why. But it leaves us with the biggest question of all, the monumental how. I mean, can you imagine the challenges? The immense political, technical, and cultural hurdles you'd have to overcome to build a single command for 57 different nations. It's a staggering
of Muslim nations. All right, so this is episode 22, and for this one, we are focusing entirely on one single, incredibly powerful source. We're unpacking the book, The Nuclear Umbrella, written by Zahir Ahmad Mir. Now, what we're going to do is pull out a really provocative, and you'll see just how detailed it is, idea from this book. We're talking about the complete architectural plan for what many have started calling a Muslim NATO. Okay, so here's our game plan. First up, we're going to look at the big picture, the overall blueprint for this alliance. Then, we'll drill down into the nitty-gritty of its four-tier command structure. After that, we'll check out the digital nervous system that's meant to connect everything. And to wrap it all up, we'll look at the ultimate strategic goal here, which is all about achieving a permanent state of military readiness. So let's get right to the core of it. The idea that's put forward in the nuclear umbrella, well, it's pretty radical. We're talking about a formal, fully integrated command system. And the book makes a big point of this. It's presented as something totally groundbreaking, a first-of-its-kind concept in Muslim history, all designed to create a genuinely cohesive military force. Right, so you might be wondering, how on earth would an alliance this ambitious actually work? Well, the source lays out a super clear four-tier hierarchy. Think of this as the organizational backbone that connects literally everything, from the highest level strategic decisions all the way down to the individual soldiers in the field. So let's do just that. Let's walk through this framework, level by level. We're going to start at the very top with the Supreme Strategic Command, and then just work our way all the way down to the tactical units on the ground. Okay, Tier 1, right at the very top, the pinnacle of this whole structure, you have the Supreme Allied Command, or SEC. The book suggests it would be based in Islamabad, and the leadership, it's spelled out very specifically, a Supreme Allied Commander from Pakistan with a deputy from Saudi Arabia. This is the absolute nerve center, you know? It's where all the high-level strategy, crisis management, all of it gets centralized for the entire alliance. But here's the really interesting part, the why behind this specific setup. The book argues that this structure is designed to pull off a tricky balancing act. It's meant to deliver two things at once. First, a stable, centralized military command, and second, broad Islamic legitimacy that resonates across all the different member nations. Moving down a level, we hit Tier 2. This is where things get decentralized a bit into 5 distinct regional commands. Each one of these HQs, based in a key city, would handle the coordination of all military ops within its own geographic area. We're talking everything from troop movements to logistics to intelligence sharing. So what's the point of this regional layer? Well, the key purpose here is to create what the book actually calls organizational harmony, which, in plain English, really just means preventing chaos. By handing off operational control to these regional hubs, the whole alliance can make sure that actions are coordinated and, that everyone's playing from the same sheet of music. All right, Tier 3. This brings the whole structure right down to the national level. The blueprint is pretty clear. It says every single member state has to set up something called a National Military Integration Unit. And what this does is standardize everything. We're talking reporting formats, intelligence channels, even joint air defense protocols. The whole point is to make sure each nation's military can just seamlessly plug and play with the wider alliance. And this is where you really see that balancing act again. It's a brilliant illustration of what the framework is trying to achieve. This tier is all about letting nations keep sovereign control over their own military forces, while also making sure they can integrate perfectly into the larger command structure whenever they need to. And that brings us to the final layer, Tier 4, the tactical level. This is where the rudder meets the road. Individual military units, your battalions, air squadrons, naval task groups, they're all pre-assigned to specific roles within the alliance. And the book is really explicit here. It points directly to the NATO model as an example of how forces can be organized for super rapid integrated deployment. Okay, so you've got this massive 4-tiered structure, but how do you connect it all? Well, obviously a body this big needs a nervous system. So now let's take a look at the unified communication architecture that the book proposes to make sure information can flow instantly across the entire alliance. This whole communication setup is built on 5 key pillars. You've got a secure encrypted digital network, a shared satellite system for early warnings, a joint air defense grid, a unified cyber defense firewall, and an emergency channel. It's a really deep, multi-layered system that's designed from the ground up for both resilience and speed. And the whole point of this entire network, especially something the book calls the red line, which is basically an emergency channel connecting the key capitals, is to achieve one absolutely critical goal: instant decision synchronization. The idea is that in the middle of a crisis, the leaders in, say, Islamabad, Riyadh, Ankara, and Cairo can all be on the same page, making coordinated decisions in real time. No delay. So, after all that, the tiers, the commands, the communication network, what's the end game? What is the ultimate goal of building this massive, complex framework? Well, according to the source, it's all about one thing: a fundamental shift in the strategic posture of all the member nations. And this right here, this really gets to the heart of it all. The goal is to move away from what you might call ad hoc planning, being reactive, uncoordinated, slow to mobilize, and shift to a permanent readiness mode. In this mode, everything is already integrated, roles are pre-assigned, and the whole system is built for an incredibly rapid response. So what the nuclear umbrella does is lay out this incredibly comprehensive architectural plan for a whole new kind of military alliance. It's a detailed blueprint for strategic readiness. But it also leaves us with a big, lingering question, doesn't it? What does it actually take to turn an architecture like this, a blueprint on paper, into a
57 different armies, each with its own history, its own way of doing things, to all fight as a single cohesive unit? It's a strategic puzzle that military leaders have been trying to solve for centuries. So let's break down the specific architecture that this book puts forward as the answer.
So how does this incredible transformation happen? How do you go from 57 to 1? Well, the book argues that it all hinges on one single critical idea: a command switch that's designed to be flipped the moment a crisis begins.
This slide really gets to the core of it. You can see the system is designed to operate in 2 completely different modes. During peacetime, it's all about collaboration, collective decisions, teamwork. But when a crisis hits, that switch is flipped, and the entire structure instantly shifts to a top-down, centralized command.
And sitting right at the top of that centralized structure is one individual, the Supreme Allied Commander, or SAC for short. The idea here is pretty radical. Grant this one commander total authority. We're talking everything from the grand strategy down to the smallest battlefield tactic. In a crisis, there's no time for debate, there's just one voice giving the orders.
So, why do this? Well, this slide shows you exactly what all that centralization is designed to prevent. We're talking about the classic problems you see in coalition warfare, right? Delays while waiting for 57 different approvals, contradictory orders coming from different capitals, and just total confusion on the ground. The whole point of a single command is to slice right through all of that noise.
So the bottom line for this first section is really straightforward. It's about engineering a system that lets many armies fight with the speed and the decisiveness of just one.
Now, of course, this immediately brings up the next massive question. If one person is going to hold all that power, who gets to be in charge? And maybe more importantly, which nation gets to lead this unified force? The book has a very specific answer.
The framework doesn't propose, a rotating command or some kind of leadership council. No. Instead, the author argues that if you look at a very strict and demanding set of criteria, there's only one nation that is uniquely positioned to take on this role of supreme command.
And according to the book's analysis, that nation is Pakistan. The author makes the case that it's the only country that really checks every single box, citing its nuclear capability, its advanced missile network, its sophisticated air defenses, its intelligence apparatus, and, of course, decades of both conventional and unconventional combat experience.
But military command, well, that's only half of the picture. The book proposes what it calls a perfect equilibrium. The idea is that while Pakistan holds the supreme military command, Saudi Arabia would provide the overarching political and religious leadership. It's a proposed balance between hard power and, soft power.
Okay, so that's the theory. That's the command structure on paper. But how would it actually work in a real crisis? The book gives us 3 very different scenarios to show how this framework would actually be put into action.
So the first scenario is a threat to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. In this situation, the Supreme Allied Commander isn't just making things up as they go. They would activate a pre-planned Jerusalem Protection Protocol. This would instantly deploy rapid response units while at the same time launching coordinated cyber and diplomatic attacks. It's all about a swift, multi-front response.
All right. In a second scenario, say a conflict in Kashmir, you can really see the integration part at work. The Supreme Command would act like an orchestra conductor. You'd have Pakistani ground forces, Turkish drones providing air cover, Saudi air defense systems, Malaysian cyber teams, and Egyptian logistics all working together. The core principle here is that no member nation is ever left to fight alone.
And the final scenario they outline is all about economic security. If a crisis threatened a major shipping lane, like the Red Sea, a dedicated maritime command would be activated, and it would immediately deploy a joint naval task force, pulling together the strengths of multiple navies to secure those vital trade routes.
So when you put all of these pieces together, what's the big picture? Well, the book concludes by describing this entire command structure as the central nervous system of the whole alliance.
And that's really the ultimate goal of everything we've just talked about. It's to transform the incredible potential of many different armies into the focused, operational power of one.
So the key takeaway from the book isn't really just about military tactics. It presents this whole structure as the only real path to collective security. The result, it argues, is an alliance that can respond to threats instantly, an alliance that can't be divided by its enemies, and one that achieves true military unity for the global Muslim community, the Ummah.
The book leaves us with this final thought, and it just perfectly captures the core argument. That transforming military potential into operational reality, it all starts with having the right architecture. It's a bold proposal for sure, and it leaves us to think about not just its potential strengths, but also the immense political and logistical hurdles a vision like this would have to overcome.